Good afternoon. Thanks so much for joining us today. It's time to talk real estate with Laura Bramnick from talkrealestateaz.com. Hi, Laura.
Hi, Sinclair.
Good to see you again.
Good to be here.
Talkrealestate.com is your website. All the contact info there, including the phone number 480-624-2705. And you are an attorney, a real estate agent, a consumer advocate. You work in residential, commercial, and land transactions.
That's correct.
It's a great combination, lawyer and real estate agent. You get the best of both worlds.
Can get the best of both, that's correct.
Yeah, sometimes it doesn't cost more to do it that way.
That's right. Call me, and if we can make it work that way, we will.
You also get questions from people who are looking at how to set up properly the legal structure when they're looking at the idea of buying or selling land.
Yes.
Or if they've got a problem, they'll give you a call on any number of topics. You mentioned that you've had some calls on land trust.
Yeah, and it's interesting because in Arizona, setting up a land trust has no benefit than in a revocable living trust.
What's the difference between just a revocable living trust, which is common in Arizona,
Very common.
and a land trust?
Well, in Arizona, there's no difference.
Okay.
But other states have specific statutes and case law. The most common states that people refer to with land trusts are Illinois and Florida, but there are other states as well. And what their statutes say is that if you put property in a land trust, you don't have to disclose the beneficiary. And so there are people who don't want others to know that they own that property.
So it's a means to anonymous ownership.
It's a means to anonymous ownership, which can be for your benefit against creditors, or you may have other reasons that you don't want to disclose that you own certain property. But most people do it in order to protect themselves against creditors.
Okay.
But in Arizona, we have no statutes and no case law that deal with land trusts. And also in Arizona, when you put property in a trust, you have to disclose beneficiaries by statute. It's a specific law in Arizona. So Arizona actually requires that the owner be disclosed.
So much for that anonymity.
Yes, so much for that. So there are a lot of seminars and books advertised on TV, and people from out of state that come into Arizona and hold seminars and tout the benefits of a land trust.
And they basically don't know what they're talking about.
In Arizona, that's correct. So if you think it sounds too good to be true, it probably is, and at least consult with a real estate attorney and double and triple check that what you're trying to do can actually be accomplished. Now if you want to buy land in Florida, fine, set up a land trust.
Well, what about if you want to buy land in Arizona, but you do want some creditor protection, maybe even a certain level of anonymity?
Right.
What about then an LLC?
Yes, and an LLC is a good protection against creditors. However, remember that the assets in the LLC, meaning the property in the LLC, if it has value, equity, your creditors can get to that.
Okay.
They just can't get to your assets outside the LLC unless you've done something inappropriate in terms of fraud where they can pierce that LLC or pierce the corporate veil, as we say. But the general rule is that the assets you hold in the LLC, they're separate from your other assets. And some people, and you and I have talked about, some people put each property in its own LLC.
Right.
Because then, if some properties have equity, they can't get to those if a creditor goes after an LLC. Let's say you have a tenant that slips and falls on your property, and maybe you don't have enough liability insurance to cover the injuries. They can only get to those assets in that particular property. But if you have all your properties,
they can't go after separate properties in different locations.
Right. Now, what other people do in order to make it harder to find out who actually owns the property is they may set up several LLCs and they have one LLC that owns another.
One LLC owns the property, another LLC owns that LLC.
And the LLC that's the owner can be the member. And so it's a way to make it cloudy and more difficult. However, you can ultimately, it has to be disclosed. At some point down the line, you're gonna find out who set it up, because the articles of incorporation, the articles for the LLC has to give the name of the people that set it up, the incorporator, so to speak. And so it just takes some digging, where in a land trust, you may never be able to find out who ultimately owns that property.
If someone sets up an LLC, do they have extra difficulty in acquiring financing?
Yes. There used to be a handful of lenders in the heyday that would lend in the name of the LLC if there was enough equity in the property, because then it was similar to a hard money loan with a better interest rate, meaning it was an equity-based loan.
Okay.
However, after our market tanked and mortgage money tightened up,
It all got tighter.
unless you have private money or hard money, you're not going to be able to find a loan in an LLC. Now, as things evolve and our real estate market improves, I'm sure you're going to find some companies that get back into that market.
Okay. You can help with establishing an LLC for a client,
Yes.
but you're not going to do a land trust in Arizona.
No, it's going to be a trust, and it can avoid probate, and it'll have some other benefits, but it's not going to protect you from creditors.
Right. Laura Bramnick can help make sure that the legal structure is correct for the state of Arizona. You are licensed through the State Bar of Arizona as a practicing attorney. You're also licensed through the Department of Real Estate as a real estate agent.
Correct.
Great combination. Laura Bramnick at talkrealestateaz.com, 480-624-2705. That's 480-624-2705, talkrealestateaz.com. Great info as always. Thank you, Laura.
Thanks, Sinclair.